as the internet has broader influence in our lives, it is inevitable that internet culture will spread to larger and more diverse group of people, whether you like it or not. So the question is, what parts of internet meme culture do we want to keep and hold as true, versus what else can we do to get more people inclusive so that we can basically break away from popular culture and the kind of the top-down control that we see today?
Hey, Jamie, do you want to jump in on that? Do you think that's the right characterization of the mainstreaming situation?
No.
Third fight.
I know, we're just waiting for it. I mean, I think it's about right. It's something where internet culture, it's funny because we're characterizing it as the mainstreamification of internet culture, but I like to think of it as more of that internet culture is now winning. You know, we have arrived. The internet is here.
The same thing happened in the 90s. Remember, I don't know how many remember this, but everyone said that like once Bill Gates became important, Steve Jobs became important, it was that, oh wow, the geeks have won, right? They won the technology space. I feel like the same thing's happening in culture. I mean, it's not as if these things are making it to the mainstream and then they're always being bastardized. For the most part, they're remaining intact once it becomes commercial. And so, if anything, it's like this is us, but this is our time.
Agree? Don't agree?
Well, I mean, it's inevitable. I think it's exciting to see that, 2 years ago when we were here, the stuff we were talking about was just kind of, still percolating and entering the mainstream. I guess that was post-Rick roll, but seeing things transcend computers and the internet and make things the mainstream and just really IRL is exciting to see. It's also kind of terrifying and a little bit disappointing being that guy who's like, we remember it as when it was cool, when it was on the internet and it's offline, our parents know it, and like, F that. But it's interesting, this group we have up here, because essentially 4chan, I run the site that produces memes, you all study it, Greg kind of collates it, and then essentially you profit from it.
Well, Ben, do you want to respond to that?
It's absolutely true, right? I mean,
are you willing to discuss your figures, your numbers?
well, I literally contractually cannot discuss my figures, but the fact of the matter is, I've said this on the record many times, we've been profitable since we started. Since we bought Academic Cheeseburger from the two people who created it, we've been profitable. And our mission is to be a business that brings, internet culture to as many people as possible to make them happy, right? And the existence of companies like us, and the fact that we can have 40 employees make a full-time living off of doing this, means that this is something that's viable that we can also do as we grow older. So, somebody get that man a tea.
So it seems like you two both agree that commercialization is inevitable. I think it makes sense to turn the discussion a little bit to, is anything lost, right? Do you think that there's an element to which the commercialization, the profit building, affect? Oh, Jamie, go ahead, sorry.
This is only tangentially related, but the fashion industry is really interesting because there are no trademarks and no copyright on clothes design. It forces innovation. Anybody can rip off somebody else's design. And this is kind of what's happening now, is that we're seeing these things where it's like, you can't copyright memes. I've seen these threads that are about, let's claim the IP on everything created on 4chan. But that's not what it's about. What it's about is, okay, they've acquired something, now let's go on and do the next big thing.
So it's a pretty positive take on it.
The commercialization of these things is driving innovation forward.
Alternatively, are there any alternate forms of commercialization that I know Academic Cheeseburger has been criticized a lot for basically exploitation
of cats?
Are there other ways to commercialize it other than one company sort of is the company that collects all of it?
Well, that's what's kind of fascinating about this is that we don't hold a monopoly on this. Like, there's actually no way to hold a monopoly on this. And if you see the proliferation of meme creation actually out of 4chan into Tumblr and WordPress and other blogging platforms, you see that this is a way for actually people to participate in an even broader way. So even though we do this a lot and we produce a lot of sites and we generate a lot of communities, by no means can we possibly be the only ones doing this. We just happen to be because apparently we're just the craziest.
Well, let's talk about the other ones, right? Because someone shout in that discussions, or one of the questions that's come up actually is people ripping off EDs, and is that a thing? I guess in this case it's directed to know you. Do you guys want to jump on that? Yeah. Go for it.
So most of Know Your Meme is user-generated content. Anybody can come on and submit memes to the site, edit memes. So of course this results in occasional plagiarism, but we have a strict no plagiarism policy. As soon as we find out about it, we remove it all. I mean, what's really funny is that it's a two-way street, really. We found somebody, Don wrote in Meme Corps, he wrote an article about fucking magnets, miracles, baby. How do they work? How do they work? And, you know, it was copy-pasted onto ED like 5 minutes later.
I wrote about Richard Dawkins and Unleashing the Rainbow and how some people think that when you use science to explain something, it destroys its beauty. And I wrote that in the Know Your Meme article, so I copied that entire paragraph and posted it in Encyclopedia Dramatica, the link to Richard Dawkins' name is a faggot.
Which is pretty funny. Let us know.
Actually, so that's another thing that I said. We have a similar problem where people will create content somewhere else and submit it to us, or the person who created it, or the person who may not have created it will submit it to us, right? There's really no way for us who accept user-generated content to know exactly where it came from. That technology just doesn't exist today. So one of the things that we rely on is an open community to say, hey guys, that came from here. And then we go do our research, just like you guys do, whether it actually came from there or it came from via there, meaning it came from some other source, but they blogged it and we found out or it was submitted to us, right? The internet really has a true currency called crediting. Unfortunately, this currency isn't widely used enough and isn't widely accepted in a form just yet. But as you can look at all of our sites, we have mechanisms that help address that. None of us are sitting here trying to make a profit on copying people's content exclusively. Like, we want to generate a community of people who participate and contribute, and we want to create an infrastructure for doing that. So it's a matter of participation.
So do you think the nature of, interesting what you just said, do you think the nature of memes is necessarily ephemeral, or do you guys see some sort of archival, like, need for all the work?
4chan? Answer it.
Well, 4chan is obviously ephemeral in that content rolls off the site. You know, we don't archive anything, and that's part of the magic of it.
But then there's 4chan archive, right, which defeats the purpose.
Right, which kind of, yeah.
Oh my God! What do you think is gained by this?
What?
What do you think is gained by the fact that you don't archive?
Well, theoretically, it means that good content reappears on the site, and bad content goes off of the site. And as we know, repost of a repost, and 99% of 4chan is noise. But again, the theoretical kind of mechanic of that is good ideas reappear, or somebody forces a meme. And so the kind of ephemeral nature of content on 4chan is part of why it has become a quote-unquote meme factory.
I think Ben's language of like currency is pretty interesting here, right? Because to some extent the claim is that 4chan doesn't have a currency for identity or reputation, right? And in fact, you could argue that 4chan has actually had to grow these things, right, to some extent by some of the support structure around it.
I wouldn't say that credit is the currency. I mean, because 4chan just flies in the face of like, there's no reputational system on 4chan. I've been thinking a lot of like the mechanics of, so we have a request board. How do you incentivize posting on 4chan? Why on earth would you sit on the request board all day and answer requests? Like, you don't get anything from that. Seeding memes on 4chan, like, because it's a quote unquote anonymous system. You can provide a name, most people don't. What